Welcome to A Lunch with Biggie, a podcast about small business and creatives sharing their stories and inspiring you. My guest today is passionate about storytelling through print, as well as fostering the curiosity in others, offering print workshops. Please welcome the owner and printer behind Desert Island Press, Elyse DeLisle. How are we doing today, Elyse?
I'm very good. I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
No, thank you. Thanks for coming on and being on. What's your go-to lunch or sandwich?
Okay, so my go-to sandwich, no matter the time of day, I'm a breakfast girl, so I'm a breakfast sandwich girl.
What's a typical breakfast sandwich for you?
Well, typical, I'll take any. I will say I'm a vegetarian, so that kind of skews things a little bit, but I do eat eggs. My favorite breakfast sandwich is one of my friends owns a food truck in Seattle, and it's called Sunny Up Seattle, and all of the sandwiches are named after famous women. So I get the plain Jane Goodall, which is eggs on a Tolera roll with white cheddar cheese, and then you can get it stuffed. So it's stuffed with a harissa hash brown, and it's amazing.
I love that. I actually wrote up Sunny Up Seattle because I think I have some friends either going to Seattle or going to be in that area, and I want to make sure I share that with them so that they have something to keep an eye out and look out for. So that's awesome.
Worth it.
So tell people a little bit about Desert Island Press. How did it come about? And tell people what they can expect if they were to go to Desert Island Press, and then we'll kind of be able to from there we'll just kind of start unfolding through some of that information and work about that.
Yeah, so I opened Desert Island Press in October of 2024. It started as a personal studio the year prior where I was just outgrowing my creative space at home, which is where I'm at right now. I had a printing press at that point. I have a screen printing press. And I wanted to be in the community. Working at home wasn't really, I had been doing it for 3-4 years at that point, and I was just getting really restless, and I wanted to be out in the community. So I opened my personal studio, and then we kind of grew out of that, did a lot of workshops that first year, and then moved into the Desert Island space last fall and have been focusing on expanding the amount of artists that we have in the space, specifically printmakers and people kind of working in old forms of printmaking, and then sharing as many print forms we can through classes.
It's awesome. I want to rewind a little bit about with it because obviously there's some things I feel in the journey. There's got to like some of the things I've read from you about your past. I'm kind of curious if that's kind of like what's kind of taking you to this point where you got to Desert Island. But before I get there, where did the name come from? Like what led you to Desert Island Press?
Yeah. So my last name means from the island. So in changing the previous studio name from Elyse DeLisle Print Studio, I wanted it to have some sort of link to that as a natural evolution. So it felt right. Also, a part of my creative process is doing residencies every few years, and I particularly like residencies with other artists. I don't like going at it alone. So at my last residency in 2022, I was in the Darien jungle between Panama and Colombia, and we had taken a boat out to an actual desert island, uninhabited, and I was just staring out at the ocean with this group of people that I had been spending the month with. And it was the first time that I had the realization that I was capable of doing it and that I wanted to do it. Actually, it was kind of something that was floating around in my head. So it has personal meaning in that way as well.
Holy cow. I'm so glad I'm so glad I asked. So I want to talk because one of the things that I found very interesting from my research and from what you provided so I want to kind of talk a little bit about the transition because you were originally an educator, so a teacher, as well as also a college lacrosse coach, which then later on then you became a full-time artist, which I know that was the part where you shared with me that you ended up living, and obviously just like you mentioned with how the name of the business came from, but living and making art on the road in a kind of like a renovated camper. Can we talk a little bit about this journey of educator, lacrosse coach, how do we went from like, I'm going to go do full-time artist and going and doing all of that to then saying, hey, I think it's time for me to open something and start educating and build a community for printing?
Yeah, absolutely. It's kind of difficult to describe to people because sometimes I feel like when I drop pieces about my past, people are like, how old are you? Like, what, what have you been doing this whole time? But I am someone who's always been very adventurous and just love learning. I think at the root of this is I love learning. And if I can help people do that, it's just really rewarding for me to be able to see other people grow. So I played college lacrosse at Rollins in Orlando for 4 years and kind of bounced around, not knowing what I wanted to do in that kind of post college life. So I ended up teaching. My undergraduate degree is in English just because I love it and enjoy it. So I taught high school English. And then after that first year of teaching, decided that that wasn't what I wanted to do. I was coaching all throughout that time as well. And so I went back to school at that point and got my master's degree in education and ed leadership. And from that point, I was a college coach after I graduated with my master's. So I coached at a D3 school in Virginia, and then I coached at Embry-Riddle in Daytona and loved it. I love working with young adults that age. That was the most rewarding experience for me. The competitive side of me got extremely burnt out at that point. I was just so not interested in recruiting because that's a large part of the job. I put on a lot of events at that point in time, which I feel like is one of my strong suits. I really learned that kind of skill set there, putting on recruiting events for the schools. And so got really burnt out, like most of us do at some point in our early careers. And I was making art on the side. I've always been a creative person, like picked up a camera at a young age. I've just always done things with my hands, like just have always made things, just nothing ever stuck. So in that particular time where I was getting really burnt out with it, I saw printmaking being done, just honestly like YouTube, the internet, and was really taken by the process. A few artists that I really admire were doing it. And so I taught myself and then was prompted from friends to start selling my work. So I was selling my work on the side while I was coaching. And then at the end of a school year, I was just like, I don't want to do this anymore. And so I really put all of my chips into making art full time. And then naturally, I was in a long distance relationship, and me and my partner were kind of trying to decide, like, are you going to come here? Am I going to go there? And instead, like, we're both really handy. She is even handier than me. So we were like looking on the internet one day at old campers, and we're like, we could renovate this thing and take the show on the road. Like, we're not tied down at this point to
Yeah.
family. Luckily, like, both of our parents were still young and didn't need to be back in Florida for anything like that, don't have kids. So, and her job is mobile. So we just traveled around for 3 years, and eventually pandemic hit, and we were in Northern California, like way north up near the border of Oregon. And we had just moved there. We were there for like 2 weeks when the pandemic hit. So we were like, we don't know anyone. We've been doing this for a few years. I think it's time to like start making our way back to people that we know. We're really homesick at that point. Probably a little tired of like bumping elbows every time we passed each other in the camper. And so we moved back to Florida to be closer to family. And then I was doing a lot of events. That's how we met, is Milk
Yeah.
Mart. I started doing Milk Mart in 2021 or whenever they kind of started up. And was doing that full time. So I was selling my art full time. And 2023 came around and I was like, this just isn't sustainable for me. There was like I had grown so much creatively, but I had left behind a part of my personal growth from teaching and coaching that I felt like wasn't really fitting together in a way that was fulfilling. So I kind of just made the jump and decided I wanted to start teaching all the things that I had learned over the last few years.
Yeah.
And put it together. So that's when I decided to open the studio in Cocoa Village.
That's awesome. And in your studio, like you mentioned, you have like an etching press, you have screen printing press. I think you have a few other things, but you also have like a high powered sewing machine. What is it about analog printing that you're drawn to?
I think it's the versatility of it. From a teaching aspect, it's the accessibility of it. Like, I was able to teach myself how to do it. I don't have a fine art degree. Granted, I feel like I can always grow as an artist, but it really gives you that room for growth. You can approach just the carving tools and a piece of rubber, a piece of linoleum, and something about carving it out with your hands, and no matter what it looks like at the end, it's just such a cool, like, you kind of feel like you put your sweat into it. And I just love that about it. And I feel like people really don't expect that when they come into classes, is how rewarding like that feels, as opposed to like not to not painting or something, because like painting is really difficult. I cannot paint, but I feel like people kind of go into classes like that sometimes knowing like, oh, I can't paint. Like they kind of go in with that mentality, whereas like printmaking is something that is a little foreign to them, and no matter what, like the graphic comes out looking really cool. So yeah, and you can apply it to clay, you can apply it to t-shirts, you can apply it to paper. There's just so much you can do with it.
And what I love about your shop is the fact that it's like a very I give it like a I don't know, it's got like a homey, quaint feel to it in the sense of like and it has such a great variety of different like because that's the other thing. I love the fact that you showcase other printers and other designs and other work. So you have like your stuff out there, but then you also have other things. But then you also have like it's an area that's open enough for you to be able to do your workshops, and that's one of the things that I think has been one of those things that I think people will appreciate in it. And you also do quite a few workshops, and we'll talk a little bit about that. I know this can't be an easy this has probably has not been an easy journey through this whole thing. Can you talk a little bit about some of the things you've learned along the way? Because one, I mean, I give you a ton of credit, and it's super awesome the fact that like because you were willing to take some undue take opportunities to yourself on like some unknown things that you're like, oh, I don't know if it's going to work or not, but I want to do this. I want to make this work. So I'm always kind of intrigued because a lot of people usually have that fear of trying to take that step. So I'm always intrigued to know, like what are some of the things that you learned along the way or experience that maybe can shed a little light to it for us.
Yeah, I think things I've learned along the way. At some point, and this might be like the athletic background for me, but like at some point you just have to start saying yes to things. I feel like maybe that's a cliche at this point, but like even if you think you're ready or not, just say yes, and it more often than not works out. Like even if it's not the perfect thing you imagined in your head, usually it's some other experience that even if you didn't like it, you're like, oh, now I don't know that I don't like that. Like that's an okay thing to learn too. Like bad experiences can also be good positive experiences, if that makes sense.
No, it totally does. Can you talk a little bit about the variety of workshops that you offer, and that people can attend and be able to do, and how they can do that?
Yeah. So I teach as many printmaking mediums as I can that I have personal experience with. So our most popular one is Learn to Block Print. So I'm teaching you how to basically use wood carving tools to carve your own stamp, and we make artwork out of that. And then another popular one for many years, because I also sew. At this point, I'm only sewing for personal use, but when I was selling my sewn and printed work, I was plant dyeing all of my fabric, which is insane, takes way too long. But from that, I've learned a lot about plant dyes over the years. So really popular classes are plant dye class, where I teach you how to make a big vat of it's a plant dye. So you're putting in plant matter, flowers, wood chips, and we're creating different colors out of it. And then
Really?
yeah, it's a cool process. It's a lot like cooking, like you're following kind of a recipe, but the colors that come out of it are really cool. And then we do cyanotype class, which is sun prints. And then we have like multi-week classes where like we don't, I feel like we don't have a ton of printmakers in our area, or it's just starting to kind of spread, but we have a multi-week class where you actually get to print on the printing press, which is a really cool one because everyone's artwork is so different that they come up with. It's really neat to see.
I love that. And when you do, out of curiosity, when you guys do like the wood block, are you guys all doing the same thing or like the same design, or you or or is it one of those you're like, okay, this is how it works, and you can create your own image, and then from there it becomes so that, or is everyone doing the same similar designs?
So this is something that I've learned over time, and it's just how I run my classes. I, in my intro to block print classes, get a lot of curious people that are just dipping their toe into it, and the thought of having to draw something on the spot is terrifying to them. So I provide multiple choices of artwork, like 5 to 6 pieces that you get to choose from, so there is like choice in it. And you can do whatever you want with that piece. It doesn't matter to me. But I do provide the artwork for that one. And then, like, if it's a multi-week course, you come in with your own artwork for that. And I teach you how to transfer it onto the block using a couple different methods. But my goal in every single class that I do is, like, I started doing this at a kitchen table. I moved into a camper and did it from a fold-out table in a camper. Like, you do not need fancy tools to do printmaking, and that's one of the coolest things. So, like, my goal is to make it the least barrier of entries for people. So if I can provide artwork and like simple tools for you, like sometimes we print with wooden spoons, that sort of thing, I feel like people get more out of the class rather than being like, oh, I'm never going to be a professional artist, so like, why try? It's like, no, you actually like don't need that much. And yeah.
I love that. I love that. Now, one of the things that you had talked about was about, like, hey, there's not many printmakers, but it's starting to grow. And obviously this is something that you love, and you're trying to, as an educator, trying to teach and have more people learn about it. One of the things that I wanted to talk about was, because when we met up, you had brought it up, and I was like telling you how I'm excited for it. I know that you're currently working on trying to create like a print fest, like a Space Coast print fest, and it's supposed to be like the Space Coast's first print festival dedicated solely to like printmaking and print education. I wanted to kind of get an idea of like where the idea came from and what can people expect, and what do you like, and I know that you still have a few months before this happens, but I'm always kind of curious, like how's that going, and that, trying to do that, especially since, like you mentioned, you did a lot of events for recruiting and stuff like that. So obviously, and you've sold at events, so you kind of have an idea, but I'm just kind of curious, like how that process is going and where it came from, and kind of like the vision for it.
Yeah. So a few different cities do different print fests throughout the year. Like there's one in South Florida that's really big every year, and then like Tampa or St. Pete has a zine fest. So like in print culture, a print fest is a really exciting opportunity to connect with other printmakers because it is so niche. So I just wanted to bring, because there are so many new people that are interested in it that I've seen from the classes and coming into the shop, I wanted to create one in our area that was equally as for the printmakers and artists as it was for the community learning about printmaking. So it's going to be the first Friday and Saturday of October. So the event is actually on October 4th, and then it's an all-day event at the Community Women's Club in Cocoa Village. And Friday night, we're going to have a mixer for all of the artists so that they can meet, because I don't think a lot of them even know that there are other people with the same interest in the area. And then Saturday, we have like 15 or 16 outdoor vendors, and then we have an indoor hall where we'll have tables, and we have everyone from collage, woodcuts, lino cuts, book binding, zines, people who make art books, comics, anything that has to do with paper, like hands-on tangible media, we want them there. Like it doesn't really matter if you're doing something innovative and different with paper media. That's kind of what it's all about. So we'll have open vending all day, and then we'll have a Q&A panel in the afternoon where we have a featured artist coming up from Miami, 22nd of Never, he's a professional screen printer. I don't know if you've seen him kind of around the stuff too, but he's got great stuff. And then, knock on wood, I'm trying to secure a steamroller so that we can do steamroller printing, which is a big thing with print fests. You basically have a giant wood block, you ink it up, put it on the cement pavement, and then roll over it with a steam printer, and you get a giant edition of a print. So that's something that that's the biggest thing that I'm working on right now, is trying to secure that with our city and kind of get all the approval to do that. That way people can really, the people coming can see like this is what these artists are doing, and it's like on a large scale, so it kind of lets it sink in for them.
Yeah. No, I mean, I'm fascinated by this. I think this is such a great and fun idea when I heard you say you were doing this, because I think it's something that and from other folks that I've talked to that have done either, some form of printing, it is a lost art. It is something that, not many people are doing. It's something that has been done for ages. And so I think it's something that I think is it's such an interesting thing to see, but also the fact that you can have an idea, come up with it, and create it. I mean, I know, like, I've seen some of the work that you've done where you actually, and I was like, I remember, because I remember going in with my wife and telling her, I'm like, hey, I'm like, these are like the tools, like you got to use these tools and great, and like to in order to create this and to then have it, I'm like, it just looks so beautiful to be able to see. So I think a lot of people will appreciate and be able to learn quite a bit from it, which I think is awesome to be able to do that. Can I, when you do, because obviously you do, I know you do a lot of events. I know you have your shop, but you also do events and stuff like that. Can we talk a little bit about some things that you recommend, or things that you maybe can suggest to someone who's like looking to do events or wanting to do events, or like things that you may, tips or tricks, things that you may think that are important for them when they're thinking of doing an event?
Yeah. So there are lots of duds and there are lots of gems, and it honestly just takes doing as many as you can emotionally handle to find which ones work best for you. Like, I think I spent 3 years just doing them, except for over the summer, every weekend. And after the first year, you know kind of which ones have your crowd, which ones don't. Like, for some reason, I don't do well at night events where there's like booze involved. I don't know why. Some people, that works for them. It's like, heck yeah, I want a t-shirt right now. This is great. People don't want to carry around my art for whatever reason when they've been like out drinking all night. So it takes doing ones like that where sometimes it's a bust and then other ones are great. And then some are organized better than others, and you kind of just figure that out along the way. I remember being super nervous the first kind of month or so of doing them, but you just get used to it. Like, people who come into your tent more often than not are going to be really nice. If they're a bozo about anything, whether it's prices or the media that you're making, like, that's their problem. It's not yours. And you kind of just try not to let it get you down. Although sometimes it does. But yeah, I don't know. Just, again, it's like saying yes to putting yourself out there. It can be scary, but you just got to practice at it.
Yeah, and that's a tough one, right? That's always a tough
For
one to
sure.
be able
Easier
to
said
kind of
than
be
done
able to.
sometimes.
Yeah, exactly. That's a tough one. I want to talk a little bit about, just because, and I'll admit it, I've lately been in a kind of in a funk to like want to post on social and do all those things. And sometimes when you're like a solopreneur where you're like doing everything, it becomes very tedious, and kind of sometimes you're just like, there's only so much I can do. I rather focus on some of these things. Do you have certain ways that you get yourself out of those, or maybe even when you or like, and we don't even have to go on that route. We could even go the route of, if you want to go the route of like, if you're ever in a creative rut, are there things that you do to get yourself out of those creative ruts?
It's kind of funny because I feel like with the ruts specifically, I'm learning the same lesson every single time. Like, I know exactly what gets me out of the creative rut, and it'll take me like a month to be like, okay, like, you should be drawing every day. You should be surrounding yourself with other artists because for me, that's what works. And you should be doing like silly things like, instead of sitting and like lamenting and like doom scrolling, like, how about just go for a walk and like breathe some fresh air and be outside in nature? Like, simple things like that, just to kind of break the cycle. Because that's really all a rut is, right? It's like a cycle that you've kind of got yourself sucked into. So I think, like, for me, I would consider myself in a creative rut right now just because I've been doing so many classes for a year and a half at this point, and I've really been creating to assist other people, which is, like I said, really rewarding for me. But my personal work has been on a big drop off. So, like, right now, I'm revisiting all of those things. Like, I'm starting to journal again. I'm going through the artist's way again. Starting this Saturday, I'm meeting up with some people to go through that because that's a big cycle breaker.
Yeah.
And then planning on doing another residency next year. I don't know where it'll be, but I find just like being with other people who kind of are going through similar things but might be in different mediums is, yeah, that's what gets me out of it. So just kind of figure out what it is for you.
No, I love that. I love that. And I love asking that question just because there's times when like I feel like I'm creative, but my brain is just not like I'm just there's like a disconnect and I'm just like I can't get it to spark fully. And so then it's like so it's always nice to be able to hear other people's ideas. And I do totally agree with the idea of going out for walks and just kind of getting away from the doom scrolling and things like that. That's always touch some grass and go outside and walk, I think is huge. It's something that I think is so super important with that. What advice would you have for someone wanting to start something?
Wanting to start something. Just do it, make something, even if it's bad. You got to make a lot of bad things to make a good thing. So the first thing's probably not going to be perfect. Just start, I guess.
What, out of curiosity, what was the first thing you did? Do you remember the first thing, or do you still have a copy somewhere of the first thing that you created
Oh, yeah.
or printed?
Yeah, it was terrible. And I'm pretty sure it was like not, I don't think I like directly copied someone, but it was not an original thought, if that makes sense. Like, I'm sure it was imagery that I had seen from somewhere else, and I was just like trying to figure out the process. So, mimicked it in a different way. And then, like, eventually you learn the skill and you just make what you see, you know? So, yeah. I have my first print. It's terrible.
Out of curiosity, have you? I don't know if I've seen it, but I definitely want one. If you can, I'd love for you to send so we can share, or maybe even share when the episode drops. I'd love for you to share the imagery because, like you said, you had seen like the desert island when you were like when you went. If you have something like that printed, and I think you do, of like that image, I'd love to see it. I love to see what kind of like where you were and what it was like, what you kind of like, at that time.
Yeah,
I'm very intrigued by that.
absolutely.
So if you could definitely share that, that would be great. Where can people? Well, before we talk about where people can follow you, I want to talk about like we'll talk about the classes because I want to be able to. I know my episodes are evergreen, but that's one thing that you do. You constantly are always doing is having classes and those opportunities. So I kind of want to be able to share how people can, as you start talking about like where people can follow you and stuff like that. I want you to also be able to talk about like how they can sign up for classes so that they can actually take part in this and be able to do it because it's the beauty of it is it's in a beautiful spot in Cocoa Village. When we went, I loved it. We specifically went and it was funny because when we went, I specifically went, one of the things I was meant to go with was to see Elyse. I wanted to go in and I wanted to see her shop because I had been following and since I knew her and I wanted to support, but I also wanted to see it because I thought she'd be a great guest on the show. And I want to be able to tell people like, hey, like this is a great opportunity. And I was just telling her before we even started recording that I do want to try to take part in one of her classes just because I'm so intrigued by it and I want to be able to learn. And I think it's something that you're right. When you do something, you appreciate it. So if you can tell people a little bit like where they can follow you, as well as also sign up for classes and things like that, I think that would be, I really appreciate it.
Yeah. So our physical location is in Cocoa Village, right next to Hello Again Books. If you're familiar with the village, they're kind of a landmark business there. And then to sign up for classes, you can go to Desert Island Press FL.com and there's a workshop section. It is not Desert Island, which a lot of people think. They come in looking. Yeah, that's a
Because
good
I'm
one.
a horrible speller and my wife, that's how my wife remind me. Is it with two S's or one? And she's like, strawberry shortcake is a dessert.
There we go. I'm going to start using that. Yeah, we get
There
some
you go.
confusion. I'm like, no, we don't have cupcakes. I'm sorry. But yeah, desertislandpressfl.com, and then we have a workshop section. You can also sign up for a workshop newsletter on there. I only email for the workshop calendar, which comes out seasonally, and they get the drop about a week before, with the ability to sign up. And then our workshops do run out pretty fast just because I like to keep them. You've been in the space. It's a small space. I'm not trying to jam
Yeah.
a pack of people.
Yeah.
And also, I like to keep my classes small just because it is a new art form for a lot of people. And I feel like the more comfortable people are. So
Yeah, makes
yeah,
sense. And then at the same time, since we're chatting, and once again, it's evergreen. But if you're listening to this, I'm assuming I will say it. It's the Space Coast Print Fest is going to be very successful, and there'll be other future ones. But just to kind of get an idea, like you mentioned, it's the first weekend. It'll be the first weekend in October, and then you also mentioned that what I love about it is that you'll get to see variety of different forms of art, but then also it sounds like you could also be kind of somewhat hands-on. There'll be some hands-on abilities, opportunities as well for people to be able to kind of at least get their hands dirty to kind of figure out and see the learn of this art form.
for sure. Yeah, we invited all of the artists to bring their technique and demo if they want to. So we'll have some live screen printing, we'll have live block printing, some live collage, that sort of thing. And then again, knock on wood, hopefully we'll have the steamroller there. And to see all of the info for that, and if you want to apply, we have about 5 spots left at spacecoastprintfest.com. Yep, that's where you can find that.
That's awesome. How has that process been working with the city and having this idea and then now trying to kind of create it and bring it to life? Has that been pretty I mean, it's pretty sure it's pretty daunting, but probably pretty exciting as well.
It's been good. It's been keeping me up some nights just because I'm a perfectionist. I am so type A. So
You're a Virgo, right? You're a
I'm a
Virgo as well.
double Virgo. So it's like I'm like spreadsheet city over here. But luckily, I'm partnering with Hello Again for that, and they do a large Pride event every year. So they have the local connections and kind of know how to work in and out with that sort of stuff. So they've been great about that. And then we've had people volunteer, which has been really cool. I think that's been a big anxiety for me, is asking for help. But people have come to me and said that they want to be involved, which is really neat. I think it'll be a really good event. People are excited about it.
It's awesome. You have kind of like a little, like some places have like what is it called? The free little mini libraries, but you have like a little art. Can you talk a little bit about that? What's outside your shop? It's like a little, almost like a little art gallery type thing.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about that before we go?
So they're called flags, free little art gallery, and then anywhere can have them. They can be in neighborhoods, they could be at retail stores, wherever. You just put one out front and then log it online, and it has where they are throughout the entire country. People send art to them, and it's a tiny version of our store. So it's tiny Island Press. It's painted the same color as the shop, and we had a mini grand opening for it. So we had a tiny ribbon cutting, we had tiny cookies, tiny champagne. I made a tiny like pamphlet zine for people to put in it, and it was a lot of fun. And I wasn't sure how it would take off, but there's been new art in it every single day since I opened it like 2 months ago, which is really cool. People really like the tiny art gallery.
So can people take art too, or is it just provide? So it's basically like a mini library, but it's almost like you can take a little art and put a little art there as well.
Yep, people take, people leave. Yeah, people leave stickers that they've made. It's really open to any sort of medium, paintings. Yeah.
That's awesome. I love that. I think it's super cool. We'll definitely have to share some images of that. One trend that I've noticed, and I don't, and I'm bringing it up since we're chatting. I've been seeing a lot of people doing, a lot of artists that are actually printing, like, it's almost like using the little vending machines, like the little square vending machines. Has that something that you've kind of thought of that maybe you can do using your printing and being able to either like different stamps or different things like that to kind of create like your own version of that, and then kind of be able to have like the little vending machine of the Desert Island Press, but also maybe some different cool designs and whatever that people can buy for, put a little quarter thing and collect a collection of them. Maybe that's something that maybe can happen at the Space Coast Print Fest.
That's a good idea. Yes, I have had one of my printmakers in our store approach me about potentially doing it. So it's something that I'm open to. Again, you've been in the store. We would have to hang it from the ceiling.
Yeah, ironically, from what I've seen, a lot of people, what they do is they'll either put it. Well, I went to one shop that's smaller, just so you know, smaller,
Okay.
like super small. It's called Yay Tiny Shop. They're like, it's so small that only 4 people can fit in the store at a time. And what they've done is they've created it a little bit of, you obviously have like some honesty thing going there because you have to they put it outside. So they take it out and they put it outside. So it's like an outside little machine. And then what they'll do is in the evening, then they'll put it back into the shop.
Okay.
And then they do that. And then of course they have to have like a bunch of quarters. I didn't realize like how big this is becoming, because I ended up traveling up to the New England area and I saw there's like an artist who's like doing it
Yeah,
everywhere,
I think it's
in different.
Inkiardi. I don't know if I'm saying
Yes.
that right, but she's amazing.
Yes.
Like I went to a New York Liberty game, and there was one inside the stadium. Just like
Yep.
it's amazing. Yeah,
Yeah, it's awesome. And so like and then I saw that there's some in Orlando. There's like one or two in Orlando. And so then now I'm like intrigued by it. 'Cause I think it's such a fun idea to be able to do, and it's it's something fun, and heck, everyone has all this change. Why not use it and give money to help support an artist, and then they get like a little art, a little bit of art. Something to think about, maybe for for you to be able to kind of do in some form or fashion, at Space Coast Print Fest. But I mean, the fact that you're already kind of doing a cool version of that with the little print shop, the little print gallery, is, I think, it's the little tiny print island, I think, is awesome. Elyse, thank you so much for coming on. I'm super glad we got a chance to talk. I'm glad I got to hang out with you for a little bit when I saw you, and then to be able to do this. I'm excited to be able to kind of share your story. I think it's super fun, and just the fact that what's inspiring is the fact that you like kind of have like this, like, you kind of almost like blended all of the things that you love, with the idea of education, art, and all of that, but then also kind of created something that you now are be able to share with other people, not only in your community, but also just, online, people be able to purchase online and things like that. So it's super exciting to see all the different things that you're doing with Desert Island Press. And so thank you so much for coming on.
thank you.
That's our show for today. If you definitely want to see more information, find out about the event, do some shopping, maybe take a workshop. I'm going to schedule. I know I'm definitely going to try to do a workshop in the near future at Desert Island Press, because I just definitely think it's such a fun idea of it. But if you enjoyed the show, make sure to subscribe. Make sure to share this episode with people that you think maybe need to be inspired. I think Elyse is a great example of that. If you want to support my brand, check out Deli Fresh Threads. Thank you. Until next time, keep eating sandwiches and follow your passion.
Thank you so much.